Hello, Writing 350. This week, I want to take you through Chapter 8, which is going to be positive and informative messages. And it's going to be the first in 3 chapters about messaging. I'm starting with this one, and then we'll also talk through negative and persuasive messaging in other videos. So let's kind of get this underway. Positive and informative messages are essentially that, right? We're trying to give good news to someone. So this could be internally or externally, right? We're either giving them positive news or just simply information that they might take neutrally, which is something, of course, we do all the time, right? Whether we're texting, emailing. So this is a genre that we're familiar with. So we're not trying to necessarily reinvent the wheel, but to be more intentional in the way that we're doing that, to make sure that we are being as efficient as possible, being as clear as possible, and all of those kind of things to kind of fit into the business communication realm. So essentially, our primary purpose is just to give that news and make sure that they receive it positively if it is good news, or if it's neutral, right, that they don't have a negative reaction to it. And also to reduce or eliminate the need to communicate further, right? We don't want to send incomplete information to a party where they have to email us back. When was that? Where was that? What's going on? Because, of course, that's just a waste of everyone's time. So that's one of the challenges that we have in positive and informative messaging is the balance of how much information do I have to give right now to this audience versus, giving them too little or too much. So one of the most important things in positive and informative messaging is goodwill. So we talked about goodwill previously, about fostering that relationship of trust. And these are a few different ways that we can do that. One of the things to build goodwill in positive messaging is to focus on benefits. And what I mean by that is, what are the good things? What are the positive attributes that the audience is going to kind of latch onto in the news, right? So if you're sending out an email to your customers about a 40% off sale, right, the benefit is going to be obviously that they're going to save money on items that they might like, right? So you want to make sure to focus on adding benefits and highlighting those if you're presenting policy information, something that is new, something that has changed, if you need to shape their attitude. So it's possible that the information could not be obvious as to why it's a benefit. So making sure that the audience understands it clearly, pointing out any benefits that they may miss, and things like that. So you want to kind of highlight what's good about what's happening for the audience. You also want to frame the benefits in a way that is positive to them. First of all, we want to make it engaging, but we also want to make sure that it is specific to the audience that we're talking to. So the benefits need to be relevant to the group that you're writing to. And you may have multiple audiences if you're not able to segment your message to them. So you want to think about, all right, how can I make this relevant to the largest number of people? And your book kind of defines a few ways to do that. Stories, humor, informational hooks, things like that. Of course, you have to kind of balance. You don't want to open with like a joke that could be inappropriate or something like that. Finding a way to do that in a creative but not potentially offensive way. You want to connect with that audience. So if there are complaints, you want to respond to those. A lot of times we see this in the social media realm where we're giving information and then you see a bunch of comments underneath about complaints that are happening. That gives you an opportunity to respond to complaints or to express gratitude as part of the messaging as well, to thank people for being patrons, or to, even if it's an internal message, to thank, your coworker or your supervisor or whatever. As an additional way to connect with them. As I said before, we want to avoid information overload. One of the things about positive informative messaging is that you're likely to get people to kind of skim. And we get emails like this all the time, right? And you're kind of just scanning for the relevant information. So if you send a 2-page long kind of, flowery email, you're not going to convey everything that you want to. So you want to protect their time, manage the information that you convey. It's possible they don't need everything right then as well. There might be future communication where they can get more information, or you can lead them to other sources like a website or things like that, where they can find out more if they need to. Your channel choice matters. A lot of chapter 8 is focused on this, and I did not include a lot of it in this lecture because I think most of it is fairly intuitive, especially for you guys. You use all of this stuff all the time, right? You're using your phone as far as like from the calling, emailing, texting, social media, and having kind of an innate understanding of the differences of those and what the purpose of each of them is. So I don't think it's necessary to kind of go over each one, but I do think it's important to highlight that we have to be intentional about the choices we make when picking a channel. So, when it's appropriate to call someone versus email them, to text versus posting on social media or whatever. And that isn't just dependent on yourself and your comfort, right? Like, oh, I don't really want to call that person or, whatever. But it's about them and making sure we're keeping that you attitude in mind when we're choosing what channel to connect with them. One of the other components of this chapter is about subject lines, which is an interesting kind of thing, but also very important. And this is true for the negative and persuasive messaging as well. And there's kind of different criteria for each. But when I'm talking about a subject line, I mean whether you're writing a memo or you're writing an email or anything like that, to kind of get somebody to open and accept your message, right? In email, we get inundated with messages all the time with very generic email openers like hello or whatever. You want to make sure that your subject line is specific, so it's not just right. If it's a sale on Labor Day, your message subject line shouldn't just say Labor Day, right? You want to be specific, so Labor Day sale this weekend. That's concise. It doesn't maybe more than like 5 to 7 words or one sentence, and it's appropriate to the message type. So if there's good news, right, or positive information, you can give that right away in the subject line. Whereas we'll talk about in negative messaging, you kind of want to hide that until they open the message. But essentially, you want to make your subject line something that someone will open. So this is an important part of actually writing this message, because if you don't create a subject line somebody wants to engage with, they're never going to open it, and then the information is not given to them. So you're kind of dead in the water with that. So be mindful of that as you're going forward. And then, of course, the ending, we want to focus on a goodwill ending, right? So making sure we're trying to build up the business relationship we share with the reader. So this can be something like a compliment or gratitude, or just looking forward, or a summary of the information. So today, this is what we did. This is what, is happening. This is where you can go for further information and things like that. So I do have some student samples. I'm not going to pull those up for you right now, but I will post them under your deliverable section. I think if you are interested in looking at samples, a place to do that is literally to just open your own email box wherever you have email sent that's from companies, like promotional emails. All of those kind of things are promotional and informational messaging. We get them from the university all the time too when we get the updates. Look at the subject line choices that they're making. Look at the way that they're organizing their information, and you'll kind of notice really quickly that there's some that are much more effective than others. Some are way too long, some are way too short, some just include images, some give you no way to follow up. And it may seem like a really simple task to do this kind of writing, but it's actually kind of challenging in that you have to balance the two things. So that might be kind of a little practice for you. I think your textbook also has some samples as well, so you can kind of get a sense of, okay, what's stronger versus not. This is a helpful kind of diagram, and it's different, slightly different in your book. This was from before when it was chapter 9, now it's chapter 8. So I think it's a slightly different page, but this gives you a sense of how to organize the information. So hint, I would use this when you are going to do your assignment, right? So you want to start with the good news, the most important information, and make sure to give details, background, clarification, and you want to think about, you can use bullet points, you can use tables, you can use images, you can use anything that is going to make more sense, right, than just writing it in like a letter or just straight up paragraph format. If there is any negative information, you want to present that as positively as possible, but make sure you don't leave it out, and then explain any benefits to them with a goodwill ending. So this is kind of the checklist for you to say, okay, did I do all of this, all of these things? And this is included on your assignment sheet as well. So Your deliverable for this week is a series of messages, one positive, one negative, and one persuasive. So your positive scenario is this one. We're working with our fake company called The Perfect Donut, where you are working for them and you are writing to their customers telling them that they are getting an increase in their rewards. Yay, good news, right? You can make up whatever those rewards are. Obviously, you can't tell them all they're getting $1,000,000 or, they're getting a Tesla or whatever. It has to be something reasonable, right? So just like if you're a customer at Starbucks, Tim Hortons, Panera, whatever, what kind of stuff do they give you, right? Free cookies, they give you, coffee after a certain time, whatever. But you do need to talk about the fact that they do not, their previous points aren't going to transfer. So, if you have built up a certain amount of reward points, those are now gone. So just be mindful of that. I have a format for you in your textbook. You can look that up, as well as the outline like I showed you in this slideshow. That's 811 on page 236, so to kind of help you with that. So that's kind of where you want to go for this one, is to write that letter, and then you'll have 2 more as part of this as well. So good luck as you go forward. Have any questions, let me know.